Suddenly, my ingratitude startled me. Fate was offering me every happiness, and I was not satisfied. That afternoon had been the culmination of both our lives. That was what it meant to Pauline and to me. It was the reason I had not asked for any explanation. To speak, to ask questions would have been, somehow, to differentiate ourselves. But waiting until the next day to see Pauline seemed impossible. With an intense feeling of relief, I resolved to go to Montero's house that very evening. Immediately afterward, I changed my mind. Could not do that without first speaking to Pauline. I decided to look for a friend. Louis Albert Morgan seemed to be the logical one, and asked him to tell me what he knew about Pauline's life during my absence from Buenos Aires. Then it occurred to me that the best thing would be to simply go to bed and sleep. When I had rested, I would see everything more clearly. Besides, I was not in the mood to hear anyone speak disparagingly of Pauline. Going to bed was like being put into a torture chamber. Perhaps I remembered my nights of insomnia, when merely to stay in bed was a way to pretend not to be awake. I turned out the light. I would not dwell on Pauline's actions any longer. I knew too little to understand the situation. Since I was unable to empty my mind and to stop thinking, I would take refuge in the memory of that afternoon. I would continue to love Pauline's face even if I had found something strange and unnatural in her behavior. Her face was the same as always, the pure and marvelous face that had loved me before Montero made his abominable appearance in our lives. I said to myself, there is a fidelity in faces that souls perhaps do not share. Or had I been mistaken all along? Was I in love with a blind projection of my preferences and dislikes? Had I never really known Pauline? Is knowing another ever even possible? I selected one image from that afternoon, Pauline standing in front of the dark, smooth depths of the mirror, and tried to evoke it. When I could see the image, I had a sudden revelation. My doubts were caused by the fact that I was forgetting Pauline. I had tried to concentrate on the contemplation of her image, but imagination and memory are capricious faculties. I could see her tousled hair, the fold of her dress, the vague semi-darkness around her, but not Pauline. Many images, animated by the spontaneous energy, passed before my closed eyes, and then I made a discovery. The small horse of jade could be seen on Pauline's right, in a corner of the mirror, like something on the dark edge of an abyss. At first, I was not surprised, but after a few minutes, I remembered that the figurine was not in my apartment. I had given it to Pauline 2 years ago. Told myself that it was simply a superimposition of anachronous memories. The older one, of the horse, the more recent one, of Pauline. That explained it. My fears evaporated and I should have gone to sleep, but then I had an outrageous, and in the light of what I was to learn later, a pathetic thought. If I don't go to sleep soon, I'll look haggard tomorrow, and Pauline won't find me interesting. Soon I realized that my memory of the figurine in the bedroom mirror was completely inaccurate. I had never put it in the bedroom. The only place in my apartment it had ever been was in the living room, on the bookshelf, or in Pauline's hands, or in my own. Terrified, I tried to conjure up those memories again. The mirror reappeared, outlined by angels and garlands of wood, with Pauline in the center and the little horse at the right side. I was not sure whether it reflected the room. Perhaps it did, but in a vague and summary way. On the other hand, the little horse was rearing splendidly on the shelf of the bookcase, which filled the whole background. A new person was hovering in the darkness at one side. I did not recognize him immediately. Then, with only slight interest, I noticed that I was that person. I saw Pauline's face in its totality. It seemed to be projected to me by the extreme intensity of her beauty and her despair. When I awoke, I was crying. It was impossible to judge how long I had been sleeping, but my dream was no invention. It was an unconscious continuation of my imaginings and reproduced the scenes of the afternoon faithfully. I looked at my watch. It was 5 o'clock. I would get up early and, even at the risk of making Pauline angry, go to her house. That decision, however, did not relieve my anguish perceptibly. Got up at 7:30, looked at a long bath, and dressed slowly. I did not know where Pauline lived. The janitor at my building let me borrow his telephone book and city directory. Neither listed Montero's address. I looked for Pauline's name. It was not listed either. Then I discovered that someone else was living at Montero's former residence. I thought I would ask Pauline's parents for the address. I had not seen them for a long time, not since I found out that Pauline loved Montero. Now, to explain, I would have to tell them how much I had suffered. I did not have the courage. I decided to talk to Louis Albert Morgan. I could not go to his house before 11. I wandered through the streets in a daze, pausing to speculate on the shape of a molding or pondering on the meaning of a word heard at random. I remember that at Independence Square, a woman with her shoes in one hand and a book in another was walking up and down on the damp grass in her bare feet. Morgan received me in bed, drinking from an enormous bowl which he held with both hands. I caught a glimpse of a whitish liquid with a piece of bread floating on the surface. Where does Montero live? I asked. He had finished drinking the milk and was finishing bits of bread from the bottom of the cup. Montero is in jail. I could not conceal my amazement. What? Morgan continued. Didn't you know? He undoubtedly imagined that I knew everything except that one detail. But because he liked to talk, he told me the whole story. I thought that I was going to faint, that I'd fallen suddenly into a pit. And there too I had heard the ceremonious, implacable, and precise voice that related incomprehensible facts with the monstrous and unquestioning conviction that they were already known to me. This is what Morgan told me. Suspecting that Pauline would come to visit me the day before I left for Europe, Montero hid in the garden. He saw her come out. He followed her. He overtook her in the street. When a crowd began to gather, he forced her into a taxi. They drove around all night along the shore and out by the lakes, and early the next morning he shot her to death in a hotel in the suburbs. That had not happened yesterday, it happened the night before I left for Europe. It had happened 2 years ago. In life's most terrible moments, we tend to fall into a kind of protective irresponsibility. Instead of thinking about what is happening to us, we focus our attention on trivialities. At that moment, I asked Morgan, do you remember the last party I gave before I went to Europe? Morgan said that he did. When you noticed I was concerned and you went to my bedroom to call Pauline, what was Montero doing? Nothing, Morgan said briskly. Nothing. Oh, now I remember. He was looking at himself in the mirror. I went back to my apartment in the entrance hall and I met the janitor. Affecting indifference, I asked if he knew that Miss Pauline had died. Why, of course, he said. It was all in the papers. The police came here to question me. The man looked at me curiously. Are you all right? Do you want me to help you upstairs? I said no, and I hurried up to my apartment. I have a vague memory of struggling with the key, of picking up some letters under the door, and of throwing myself face down on my bed. Later, I was standing in front of the mirror thinking, I'm sure that Pauline visited me last night. She died knowing that her marriage to Montero had been a mistake. an atrocious mistake, and that we were the truth. She came back from death to complete her destiny and our destiny. I remembered a sentence that Pauline had written in a book years ago. Ours have already been united. I kept thinking, last night it finally happened at that moment when I made love to her. Then I told myself, I am unworthy of her. I have doubted. I have been jealous. She came back from death to love me. Pauline had pardoned me. Never before had we loved each other so much. Never before had we been so close to each other. I was still under the spell of that sad and triumphant intoxication of love when I wondered, or rather, when my brain, accustomed to the habit of proposing alternatives, wondered whether there was another explanation for the visit of the previous night. Then, like a thunderbolt, the truth came to me. Now, I wish I could find that I am mistaken again. Fortunately, as always happens when the truth comes out, my horrible explanation clarifies the things that seemed mysterious. They in turn confirm the truth. Our wretched love did not draw Pauline from her grave. There was no ghost of Pauline. What I embraced was a monstrous ghost of my rival's jealousy. The key to it all is found in Pauline's visit to me the night before I sailed for Europe. Montero followed her and waited for her in the garden. He quarreled with her all night, and because he did not believe her explanations. But how could he have doubted her integrity? He killed her the next morning. I imagined him in jail brooding about her visit to me, picturing it to himself with the cruel obstinacy of his jealousy. The image that entered my apartment was a projection of Montero's hideous imagination. The reason I did not discover it then was that I was so touched and happy that I desired only to follow Pauline's bidding. And yet there were several clues. One was the rain. During the visit of the real Pauline, the night before I sailed, I did not hear the rain. Montero in the garden felt it directly on his body. When he imagined us, he thought that we had heard it. That is why I heard the rain last night, and then I found that the street was dry. The figurine is another clue. I had it in my apartment for just one day, the day of my party. But for Montero, it was like a symbol of the place. That is why it appeared last night. I did not recognize myself in the mirror because Montero did not imagine me clearly, nor did he imagine the bedroom with precision. He did not really know Pauline. The image projected by Montero behaved in a way that was unlike Pauline, and what is more, it even talked like him. The fantasy Montero invented is his torment. My torment is more real. It is the certainty that Pauline did not come back to me because she wasn't disenchanted with her love. It is the certainty that she had never really loved me at all. It is the certainty that Montero knew about aspects of her life that I've heard others mention obliquely. It is the certainty that when I embraced her in the supposed moment of the union of our souls, I obeyed a request from Pauline that she had never made to me, one that my rival had heard many times.